In the world of Little House on the Prairie, two women defined opposite ends of life on the frontier. One stood in the mercantile, gloved hands on hips, voice sharp as a winter wind. A woman who believed in status, rules, and never letting anyone forget their place. The other ran barefoot through the fields, hair flying, eyes wide with wonder. A girl who believed in kindness, freedom, and doing what was right, no matter the cost. On screen, they were Harriet Oleson and Laura Ingalls. One the town's most feared gossip, the other its most beloved daughter. One played the villain, the other the hero. But behind the scenes, the truth was far more complex. Because Katherine MacGregor, the woman behind Harriet, wasn't cold. She was fiercely intelligent, deeply private, and shaped by a life of struggle. And Melissa Gilbert, the girl behind Laura, wasn't just a child star. She was a woman who grew up too fast, fought for her voice, and carried the weight of fame long after the cameras stopped rolling. Together, they didn't just play opposites, they lived them, and their stories, one of quiet defiance, the other of fiery resilience, are among the most powerful in television history. Oh, let's go beyond the bonnets and the boardwalks. Let's step off the prairie and into the real lives of two women who, despite playing enemies, helped define a generation's heart. Because this isn't just a story about a strict store owner and a free-spirited pioneer girl. It's about two women who refused to be defined by their roles, and who left legacies far greater than the characters they played. Let's begin with the woman who made you love to hate her, Katherine MacGregor. Born Katherine B. Knapp in 1925 in Brooklyn, New York, Katherine's early life was marked by hardship and loss. Her father died when she was just a child. Her mother struggled to make ends meet. From a young age, Katherine learned to be independent and tough. She found escape in books, theater, and storytelling. She studied acting, worked odd jobs, and slowly built a career in television during the golden age of live drama in the 1950s and 60s. But for decades, she remained a background player, guest starring on shows like The Fugitive, Perry Mason, and The Twilight Zone. Always reliable, always professional but never a star. Then, in 1974, at the age of 49, she was cast as Harriet Oleson, the meddling, judgmental wife of store owner Nels Oleson and mother to Nellie, Willie, and later Percival. On paper, it was a supporting role, but Katherine MacGregor turned Harriet into something unforgettable because she didn't just play a villain. She played a woman shaped by insecurity, fear, and a desperate need for control. Harriet wasn't evil. She wasn't even truly cruel. She was afraid of losing status, afraid of being seen as ordinary, afraid of a world that didn't reward women like her. Women who worked hard, followed the rules, and expected respect in return. And Katherine understood that. She didn't play Harriet as a cartoon. She gave her depth, nuance, a kind of twisted dignity. Watch her closely. Notice how she straightens her dress after an argument. Not out of pride, but self-protection. How her voice cracks when Nellie fails her. Not anger, but disappointment. How, in rare quiet moments, she looks at her children with a love so fierce, it borders on desperation. Katherine didn't just act the part, she understood it. And that's why Harriet Oleson became one of the most memorable characters in TV history. Not because she was hated, but because she was real. But getting there wasn't easy. Behind the scenes, Katherine was known as serious, disciplined, and intensely private. She didn't socialize much with the cast, she didn't do interviews, she didn't crave fame. She was there to work. And that seriousness, combined with her character's sharp tongue, led to rumors that she didn't like the cast, that she was difficult, that she resented Melissa Gilbert, the show's young star. But the truth, it was far more complicated. Katherine wasn't cold. She was guarded. She had lived through war, loss, and decades of struggling in a business that often overlooked women over 40. And she wasn't about to play nice just to be liked. She respected professionalism, and she expected it in return. She once said, "I don't care if people like Harriet. I care if they believe her." And they did. But her relationship with Melissa Gilbert, that wasn't hatred, it was tension. Born not from personal dislike but from clashing worlds. Melissa was 9 years old when she started on Little House. She was raised on set. She was close to Michael Landon, who treated her like a daughter. She was part of the family image the show promoted. Katherine was an outsider. She didn't share that warmth. She didn't hug. She didn't gush. And in a show built on sentiment, that made her stand out. Not as a villain, but as a contrast. But over time, a quiet respect grew. Melissa later admitted, "I was intimidated by Katherine. She was so strong, so sure of herself. I didn't understand her then, but I do now." And Katherine, she once said of Melissa, "That girl carried the weight of the world on her shoulders, and she did it with grace." They weren't friends, but they were allies in a way. Two women navigating a male-dominated industry, each in their own way, and both were far more complex than their roles suggested. Because while Katherine played the town's busybody, she was actually one of the most private women on set. She never married. She lived alone. She was deeply spiritual, studied philosophy, and valued solitude. She once said, "I don't need to be loved by everyone. I need to be true to myself." And when Little House ended in 1983, she walked away, not with regret, but relief. She didn't chase reunions. She didn't write a memoir. She didn't attend fan conventions. She retired to a quiet life in California, reading, painting, and living on her own terms. And when people asked why she didn't do more TV, she said, "I did the one thing that mattered. The rest is noise." She passed away in 2018 at the age of 93. A woman who left no scandals, no tell-all interviews, no bitterness. Just a legacy of strength, integrity, and one of the most unforgettable performances in television history. Because Katherine MacGregor didn't just play Harriet Oleson, she made us understand that even the people we think we hate have a story. Now, let's turn to the woman who stood across from her, Melissa Gilbert. Born in 1964, adopted as a baby, raised in a showbiz family, Melissa was cast as Laura Ingalls at just 9 years old, a role that would define her life. And from the start, she wasn't just acting, she was living. For 9 years, she grew up on screen, from a wide-eyed girl chasing butterflies to a young woman facing love, loss, and leaving home. And in every episode, she faced Harriet Oleson, the woman who mocked her family, belittled her dreams, and represented everything the Ingalls family wasn't. But off-screen, Melissa's life was far from the peaceful prairie. She was a child star, and that came with a price. She missed school. She missed normalcy. She missed being just Melissa. And as she got older, the pressure grew. She was expected to be perfect, sweet, grateful. The girl America loved, but she wasn't a doll. She was a teenager. She had doubts, fears, anger, and when she tried to assert herself, to ask for better scripts, to push for creative input, she was labeled difficult. Sound familiar? It should. Because that's what strong women are often called when they refuse to be controlled. And Melissa wasn't about to play the perfect daughter forever. She left Little House in 1983, not with a bang, but with quiet determination. She wanted to be more than Laura, and she fought for it. But Hollywood had other plans. Roles dried up. Offers leaned on nostalgia. The industry that once adored her now ignored her, and when she tried to step into leadership, she faced another battle. one far bigger than any argument with Harriet Oleson. In 2001, Melissa Gilbert was elected president of the Screen Actors Guild, ESAG, the first former child star to lead the union. She served 2 terms, fighting for actors during a time of massive change, digital media, contract disputes, and the fight to protect residuals. She stood up to studio executives. She defended child performers. She spoke with passion and knowledge, but she was also relentlessly criticized. The media mocked her. Tabloids questioned her qualifications. Some in Hollywood whispered she was just a prairie girl, but she didn't back down. Because she knew what it was like to be underestimated. Just like Harriet Oleson thought the Ingalls family didn't belong in Walnut Grove. Some thought she didn't belong in power, but she proved them wrong, and in doing so, she became something even more powerful than a TV star. She became a leader. But life wasn't done testing her. In 2000, she was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition that caused seizures, memory loss, and intense stigma. She couldn't drive. She couldn't work consistently. And in an industry obsessed with appearance, her weight fluctuated due to medication. She later said, "I felt invisible, like the world had moved on, and I was broken." Then, in 2019, she underwent open-heart surgery, a life-threatening procedure that forced her to relearn how to walk, how to breathe, how to trust her body again. Through it all, she kept going. Because Melissa Gilbert has never been one to quit, and in 2013, she wrote her memoir, Prairie Tale. And it wasn't a glossy Hollywood story. It was raw. She wrote about her abortion at 19, a secret she carried for decades. She wrote about her 3 marriages, her struggles with identity, and the pain of being typecast. She wrote about Michael Landon, not just as Papa, but as a complicated man who shaped her life. And she wrote about Harriet Oleson, not with anger, but with understanding. Because as an adult, she realized Harriet wasn't just a villain. She was a woman trying to survive in a world that didn't value her, just like Katherine MacGregor, just like Melissa herself. And that's the irony. On screen, Harriet and Laura were enemies. But in real life, they were both women who fought to be seen, one through silence and strength, the other through voice and visibility. One played the role of the outsider in the town, the other became the outsider in Hollywood, but both refused to disappear, and both left behind something rare. Legacy without compromise. Now, let's look at their on-screen dynamic, because it wasn't just drama. It was symbolism. Harriet Oleson represented the old world. Rigid, class-conscious, fearful of change. Laura Ingalls represented the new. Free, compassionate, willing to challenge the rules. Their clashes weren't just about gossip or school projects. They were about values, about who gets to belong, who gets to speak, who gets to dream. And in episode after episode, Laura wins, not by defeating Harriet, but by staying true to herself. She doesn't hate Harriet, she pities her, and sometimes even helps her. Like in the episode where Nellie goes blind, and Laura reaches out, despite everything, or when Harriet is humiliated, and Laura shows her quiet kindness. Because Laura's greatest strength wasn't her fire. It was her mercy. And that, perhaps, is the show's deepest message, that progress doesn't come from destroying the past. It comes from understanding it, and that's why their rivalry worked, because it wasn't hate. It was contrast, and Katherine MacGregor and Melissa Gilbert, one stern, one spirited, were perfectly cast, not just as actors, but as symbols. Now, in their later years, their paths diverged, but their impact remained. Katherine MacGregor lived quietly, never seeking the spotlight, but never denying her role. She once said Harriet was wrong about a lot of things, but she believed she was right, and that's what made her human. Melissa Gilbert stayed in the public eye, speaking, acting, advocating. She adopted 2 daughters from Haiti with her husband, Timothy Busfield. She became a voice for epilepsy awareness, heart health, and mental wellness. And she still connects with fans, not as a legend, but as a woman who lived, loved, and learned. And when asked about Harriet Oleson, she smiles, because she knows that without Harriet, Laura wouldn't shine as bright, and without Katherine MacGregor, there would be no contrast, no tension, no story. So, in the end, they weren't opposites. They were 2 sides of the same truth. One woman who played the role of the woman no one liked, and another who played the role of the girl everyone loved. But both were strong, both were misunderstood, both were real, and both proved that a woman's power isn't in being liked, it's in being seen. So the next time you hear Harriet Oleson's sharp voice echoing through the mercantile, or see Laura Ingalls running across the prairie, full of hope, remember the women behind them. Katherine MacGregor, the private, powerful force who gave Harriet soul, and Melissa Gilbert, the fiery, fearless woman who carried Laura into the future. One didn't need applause, the other earned it, but both deserve to be remembered, not just for the roles they played, but for the women they were. Because in the story of Little House on the Prairie, they weren't just characters, they were legends. And their legacy, it's not in the episodes, it's in the courage it takes for any woman to stand tall, speak up, and say, "This is who I am." And that is a story worth telling, for a lifetime and beyond.